Hey everyone, hello. How is your Saturday going? Most likely is most of you might have moved on into that Sunday. Everyone doing? I'm gonna do a little bit of an archive file research stream here. You can see I already shows a file. We'll see how far we get through this one, and then we might hit up the next one. We'll see how this goes. This is sort of an idea that I had for some time of making a stream like this, showing you all how I work, what I look at, what I do, and we'll take it from there. No idea what's going to happen. Probably going to be completely focused on my work, but I will try to interact with chat where and when I can. Right, I'm just getting ready to take my notes. There are my files. Go. Windy Saturday. Yeah, we had a very windy Friday. Storm Eunice hit us up. I don't know if you've seen all the stream that came live from Heathrow. That was quite entertaining. Okay, so my notes up. Might need later. This is one of the files that I got from the National Archives in the UK, and it's looking at sort of the future design of Russian bomber aircraft, and it was written in 1946 here. And it's actually, although it's talking about the Russian aircraft, it's actually only talking about German aircraft, because the Brits that wrote the report essentially assumed that the Russians would be getting a lot of information from the Germans, and that the German designs would then in turn influencing the Soviet design. That Russian Soviet. How's weather over there in Central Europe? I think Storm Eunice or whatever it was called has over there. Question. Did see some interesting stuff happening over in Europe, or not Northern Europe, Northern Germany. Okay, so doing the water. There. Oh yeah, of course, Dessau, Junkers, Dessau. That's not what Audio is cutting out. Don't worry, I'll bring the microphone a bit closer. It might just be wrong sensitivity right now. Oh, interesting. So that's an interesting sentence here. The great interest shown by Russia, back then Soviet Union, but they call it Russia, in the more advanced types of German aircraft and engine is not comparable with our own. Flying trials and test results have not shown the aircraft or engines to be so good as the results will influence British airframe or engine design. The low maximum thrust and short life between overhauls, although largely due to the lack of heat-resistant steels, shows the basic designs of the engines is not up to the British standards. Well, they did change their opinion slightly on that later on, but in 1946, that is more or less the statement they would be going with. Yeah, just gonna write some notes here. World War II Russian engines were not really that far behind. The Klimov engines and the Betsanovs and so on, they were fine. But basically here they're talking about jet engines. And the Soviets did have early trials with jet engines already in the 1930s, just like everyone. They really didn't go far with that, mainly due to a lack of interest slash lack of necessity. And of course, after World War II, the Soviet Union was sort of the country that was left, well, together with the United States, it must be said, but for the United States it was slightly different, as one of the main countries that did not have, or main belligerents that did not have already an emerging jet engine industry. So they tried to get stuff from Germany, and that didn't really work out all that way. And it wasn't until the British gave the Soviets the Nene engine, which is spelled Nene, N-E-N-E, so November Echo, that they got a proper engine, which they immediately put on their MiG-15. So yeah, it's an interesting story there, how the Brits gave the Soviets a really good engine, which then in turn bit everyone in the backside. Okay, so the MG42 typing in the background, that would be me, just in case you hear that. I have to make notes here as I'm going through it, because this is the research. Okay, so what page are we on? Page 1, right? Oh wow, so what they're saying here is essentially the conquest of Germany placed the possibility of rapid technical development within her grasp, Soviet Union, a technical advance that could not be achieved in under 10 years of solely Russian efforts. They might be underestimating the Soviets here a little bit, but that is quite a big statement. That is quite a statement. Again, that's just one opinion. State of Russian development. The fighter aircraft of the Soviets are well finished externally, and the machining in the finish has been of a high order, where effective functioning of the equipment has demanded it. But where roughness of finish cannot affect efficiency, it is as though the village blacksmith has been called in to help. This is why I love British archive files, by the way, because of sentences like that. Welding is crude. Large pieces of metal adhering to the weld are And loose nuts, missing cowling buttons, and faulty animation buildings that could not have been tolerated by the RAF. Yeah, that's just. I mean, that's the Soviet approach in a nutshell, isn't it? I mean, where it matters, they're actually pretty good, but in other things, they just matter. But I would say that is actually quite an interesting statement as well. There's a different file that I read that has something very similar on this. Russia is well aware of this deficiency in many materials and is making every effort to counteract it. Soviet heavy bombers are inferior to contemporary British and American types, the standard at present being achieved being equivalent to the British heavy bombers in 1942. The only 4-engine bomber is the P-8. War Thunder players will know what that is. It was a standard heavy bomber. Flying trials of this aircraft began in, yeah. Interesting. Okay. Engine development. Since the main Soviet effort was concentrated on production problems during the war, there's little evidence of technical advances in engine throughout the war years. Low altitude. Nothing of this is necessarily new. Yeah, that's sure. General belief that Germany did not and could not produce its multi-engine heavy bomber. This belief is quite unfounded, in fact, for despite the poor record of the Heinkel 177, incredible performance. Okay, so essentially they're looking at the different planes that were in development at the end of the war. Are we still hung up on the Nien engine in chat? Get over it. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to go through these later. The Horton project, okay, yeah. Engine development, here we go. German piston engine design was comparable with British and American design in both liquid and air-cooled engines. Their approach to the problem of obtaining high power output was opposed to British technique. It was low capacity at high boost pressures. The Germans preferred large capacity at low boost. The projected program of jet engine development was ambitious and if successful would have been equal to the most advanced stage of British developments. Capitulation in 1945, however, found the Germans limited to 2,000 pounds of thrust. Yeah, more or less. Production facilities, here we go. That's all what if. A recruiting campaign has since been in progress to attract technicians over to the Russian zone. Excellent prospects are being offered, such as a house, state-appointed servants, and a Russian scale of a Russian general. Okay. Mistrust of Russian intentions, yeah. That's actually interesting points here. Conclusion. The material and equipment in aircraft and engines in Germany is technically far in advance of anything in Russia. Blah, blah, blah. The tendency was for higher wing loading to increase the economical cruising speed. With jet engine bombers, it must be the lower wing loadings and low thickness to short ratios. It's flying away out. The flying wing marks the eventual trend in bomber development up to the point where guided missiles and pilotless, not pointless, aircraft replace the pilot-controlled type. I mean, it's 2022 right now, and that hasn't happened yet. A good example of this type of aircraft is the Orton. It is noticeable that German design figures were invariably optimistic, and some writing down is inevitable in arriving at a true figure. Yeah. Okay, so this is basically performance figures for the P8 as the Brits knew it. Junkers JU 290, 87. Those are the different engine loadouts. Messerschmitt P1107, Orton, what was that, 18. Performance figures for the different engines. Oh, they even have the really old ones on there. Oh, sorry, actually that's right. That's not. Oh, that's cool. Although I have to... Wait, we'll change that. Quickly. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So basically, the red one are the Russian engines, inline radio. The German ones are, yeah, inline radio, British, yeah, and the American the same. So power to weight ratio. This pounds per like horsepowers. Horsepower per liter. British, American, German. Weight ratio, power to liter. Interesting. I can have a look at that again. Aircraft production potential in Russian zone of Germany. Ah, though this is interesting. Oh. Let's see. What do we have here? Oh, sorry. I clicked away chat. Yeah, of course the B-21 thing, but yeah, that's the only thing there is. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about the German aircraft industry. Yes, there were certain specialists that were very good at what they were doing, but and within every factory there were also specialists who were building the aircraft, but a lot of that was just unskilled labor as well. It just was enticed through various violent means in order to get the production where the Germans wanted it to have it. So I wouldn't be too concerned about the issue of manpower that the Soviets now have, because most of that was not very well highly skilled. This is interesting. In estimating the jet engine bomber capacity of Russia proper and the Russian occupied zone of Germany, it is assumed that factories used in the assembly of twin engine fighters bombers switch to jet bomber production. Sufficient fighter production capacity is already available in Russia to allow all of the German factories in the zone to be used on bomber production, excepting Junkers Dessau, which will probably remain a development establishment. Well, not really any of that happened, because obviously the Soviets got everything out of Germany as much as they could, and they didn't really allow East Germany. Well, they did allow East Germany to have a war economy or a military economy, but I don't think they had much in the terms of development or actual local production of the real frontline stuff. Most of that came from the Soviet Union, if I remember. So this is interesting because this is sort of the assumption in 1946, which goes against what the Soviets eventually did. How do you judge if a bomber is inferior to another bomber? Well, you don't. If they're meant to fulfill the same task, then you can compare one to the other. But if you are comparing apples to oranges, you really can't do that. In that case, you have to ask, is that bomber able to fulfill the role if it's meant to be, yes or no? Or is it in that capacity out of date or whatever? So there we go. Okay, so this is just the appendix with the different Soviet bombers. We've got the Ilyushin 4. I actually like the design of the Ilyushin 4 with the gull wings. The I can never pronounce it, Petrovkovich or P8, I guess. Tupolev 2, Yer 2, and then we have the German ones. Yeah, that's nothing new. The Junkers planes. That's the same turret as on the Focke-Wulf 200, I think. Yeah, that never went anywhere. Look at that. Would you not have loved to be a pilot on that thing with those freaking jet engines right next to you? Really big gear wheels down. Yeah, I know. I mean, for the Messerschmitt design, you can see where he was coming from. Oh, that's not what I wanted here. Ah! Definitely see where he was coming from. I cannot draw a straight line. That is pretty much... No, I'm not sure. Went nowhere anyway. And here we've got the Horten, which this 1946 paper says this is where the bombers are going towards. We still have to see a bomber like that. Then again, the assumption was that bombers stay the way that they are, right? That hasn't happened. Interesting. Where do you get the archives from? I go to the archives. This is from the TNA. Okay, let's look up another file here. How about this one? German fighter tactics from 1939. Yeah, good luck, chat, reading that. Anybody want to have a crack at this? So, Bomber Command's letter was technically correct, maybe, because it was addressed to... But I'm not sure. Might ask somebody... These are the same. That our instructions to AFDV should be formatted or formulated or like that through us in order that we might help in touch with the program, might stay in touch with the program. Instruct AFDF through something to carry on. Yeah, okay. The something versus Focke-Wulf versus Focke-Wulf program. That's not possible. It's 1940. Not Focke-Wulf. Probably some internal code. Fighter versus fighter. That's the fighter versus fighter. Yeah, fighter versus. A lot of stuff in archives is reading stuff like that, which is why, please, if you are part of any sort of aircraft development, please make sure that you have a legible handwriting, because future researchers will thank you for it. This is just a letter. This is actually readable. Group know that the attack by the Germans were, yeah. Let's see if there's anything in this file that is indication that ME-1099 and ME-110 are being urgently fitted for bombing with light bombs. When is this? 20th of June. Langmuir. Must be dated somewhere. 1940. June 1940. Yeah, this is Battle of Britain stuff right here. More than likely these will be used against our aerodromes, particularly fighter aerodromes. And yeah, okay, I mean, this is basic stuff. Training of pilots, enemy tactics. With reference to your letter, regret that it's not possible to arrange the series of lectures requested, as they're difficult to arrange more time. It's not easy to spare the lecturer from his duties, and he can be reached only for a limited audience. Training of pilots. Which group? 13th group. Okay. This is the other stuff with archive files that you might not be aware of if you've not really done that yourself yet. It's a lot of wading through stuff that is just correspondence. This could be interesting. 10th of January 1940, so this is pre-BOB. To the beam attacks by Messerschmitt 110, this is required to concentrate in the first instance of the fire of fixed armament that in early, if preliminary trials have therefore been carried out between a section of Blenheim fighters, yeah. Blenheim fighters. That's a good joke. And 2 Spitfires, which are the only types immediately available. The Spitfires found that after 2 or 3 practice runs, they could get in a fleeting burst at short range, and with the excess speed available, could approach either from the rear or ahead to turn in from position the beam. Okay, so this is interesting. So basically it says that because the 110 exists, the RAF is practicing against Blenheims to see what that means for single engine fighters. That is interesting. That is interesting. The effective evasion by the bombers against these attacks depend on which way the fighter was banked. Thus, if the fighter approached from ahead to attack from the right, so this way, right of the bomber, and so was turning on the right on a right turn, the bomber section could throw him out by turning through 45 degrees on less than rate 1 turn commenced when the fighter was about 800 yards out. This forced the fighter either to cross from in front on the fire of any movable front gun without time to shoot himself, or to try to take off his bank in an attempt to turn out again, which left him behind. So, okay, yeah. Took from behind, overtook from behind till ahead, right beam, and then turned left. Ahead of the right beam, left hit off his back against it. So, what's confusing me a little bit is they say Blenheim fighters, right? And then they will use the word bomber here. I assume that they just mean like, okay, so there is of course the Blenheim fighter version that exists, but here they're just making that link, right? That's my running assumption here. But it sounds like the Blenheims are actually not fighting. They are maneuvering, but from what I'm gathering here in point 4 and 5, they're not fighting. Just maneuvering. The best evasion therefore appears to turn towards the attack if the approach has been from ahead and away from it. I'm wondering if this is just normal bombers, actually. I mean, it is written by Bomber Command. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what plane it is. I'm just trying to understand, are they just trying to simulate a 110 trying to fight a Spitfire, or is it just this? Is just bombers maneuvering in the sense that they're trying to keep formation? Because that's also the picture I'm getting from point 7 here, because they're an echelon in height. This is. Ah, okay. Here we go. So the Spitfires were pretending to be Messerschmitts against bombers. Okay. So they got some Blenheim fighters, which were like the early versions, I guess, to stand in as bombers. Could have explained that a little bit better, buddy, but whatever. Who wrote this? Mr. So-and-so group captain could have explained that a little bit better, but fair enough. Okay. I have become evident that the enemy, when using 110s, is liable to attack our bombers from the beam and above. Okay, so this is the letter that precedes this. Yeah, so this is yeah. So essentially between those two dates, they tested this out. Interesting, okay. So they use Spitfires to reproduce the attacks that 110s did against bombers. And they're not happy with they appear to not be happy with the test results, and they would like to have something like a Wellington being used for this, as well as people who have experienced 110's attacks to make sure that it is actually correct. Okay, interesting. "110 tactics." Why would they do this? This is 1939. They're taking position on the beam and above the bomber, and from this position use their rear guns. Hang on, how does a 110 that is sitting above a bomber use its rear gun? Can't they press it hard enough? I think on the 110 depression is like a degree, maybe maximum. I mean, maybe sideways. I have to check the angle that it's possible there, but like not sideways as in sideways like this, but towards the rear. I mean, this is again here's one of those reports where you just shake your head and you're just like in the confusion of combat, something must have gone awry. Yeah, but why would you be tipping your wings? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like you have one gun in the back. It's an MG15. You know, you have two MGFFs up front, which you can reload in the 110. I mean, it depends which version we're talking about. It's 1949. There is the C versions are already out, and you have 4 machine guns up front, and in that position that they're sitting right there, if they're shooting with one machine gun, let's say this is a Wellington, right, and this is a 110, and even if you're sort of tipping and angling to get that shot in with the one machine gun, you know, there's gonna be 1 or 2 Wellingtons here that are shooting back at you, and you're an easy target. Why would they? No. I think what's happening here maybe is that these 110s are sort of maybe flying past, having shot at the Wellington, and then they're going up, and the gunner is just shooting back at the Wellingtons, and that's what it looks like to the observer. It looks like they are purposely doing this, but what they're actually doing is just like they've made their attack. They may be flown past, and then they are shooting back. The gunner is shooting back, but they're not doing this on purpose. It's just a externality of the way they've attacked Wellingtons. The 110, 210, and the 410 were trash. No, they weren't. The 210 was trash, but the 110 and the 410 were not trash. I actually have a video coming out on the 110. The reason why the 110 is getting a bad press is of the Battle of Britain, where it was used wrongly, and the Germans recognized that. Actually, the 110 was an exceptionally good aircraft considering what it was, but it was misused in many ways. You can't blame the equipment if it's misused. This is such a strange thing. That's literally the only thing I can think about is 110 sort of being in the middle of the attack. There's a couple of bombers flying around. It's a relatively loose formation, and one is just overtaking a Wellington, and the gunner is shooting back. But I don't think they're doing this on purpose. Doesn't make any sense, to me at least. Trauco, yes, that's what. Okay, yeah, of course they can go inverted. Trauco, yes, they can go inverted. Yes, yes, Hans will go inverted just for you, Trauco, and then he will shoot at the Wellington with that MG15. Yes, yes, he will do that. Perhaps confused with the Dornier 17M. I wouldn't put it by past them, considering that in a instant, sort of, you might misunderstand a Dornier 17 for a 110. I mean, I have a Dornier here that I've built myself and painted myself, and that's why it looks so god awful. But if you ignore the fact that it has a massive canopy, which I haven't glued on, and of course, just looking at it now, it looks so different to a 110, but if one is going by you like this, you know, crazier things have happened. I mean, there's some of the reports that you read in the archives where somebody says like, this and this showed up in this neighborhood, and you're just like, those planes were never in that neighborhood. But no, the 110 was not supposed to be the mainstay fighter of the Luftwaffe. The Luftwaffe made a very clear distinction between the 109 and the 110. The 109 was supposed to, this is pre-war theory, right? Right up until 1949 and when the war happens. And everybody knows when you do that theory, when you make those sort of assumptions that you don't know if it's actually going to work out. You're making plans and then you say, well, we're going to see. Once the bullets start flying, we're going to see what works. But the 109 was an air defense weapon. And basically, the Germans said we're going to use the 109s to protect German airspace and, in the beginning of an offensive, escort aircraft that are acting close to the front line. So, what the Germans call the Gefechtsfeld, and not into the taktischer Raum. The distinction between that, it essentially ends between 30 kilometers from the front lines. That's the Gefechtsfeld, and then anything beyond that is the taktischer Raum. And that's what the 109s are supposed to do. And the 110s are supposed to do the escorting, the long-range escorting. So the idea for the Germans is the 110s, they attack airfields, they attack bomber formations before they come to Germany, and then when they're going out to Germany at long range, so that these bomber formations can be attacked immediately before they reach German airspace and also far away from German airspace on the way back. That's one of the reasons. The second reason is the escorting reason for the own Kampfgeschwader, which are the bomber wings, and the 110s are supposed to be used for that because the 109 doesn't have that range. No single engine fighter in 1939 had that sort of comparable range. So that's the role of the 110. And of course, during the war, that changes and things happen, and it doesn't always go the way it was planned. But that is normal. So the Germans make a very clear distinction between the task of the 109 and the 110 at the end, at the beginning of the war. I'm also gonna have that in the video that's coming up, and they it makes if you read it on paper, it makes perfect sense. Once the bullets start flying, that's where the problems start occurring. Okay, so we're still on Wellington. Is this the battle for? Does anybody see what's wrong here? Am I stupid? Does anybody see what's wrong here? It has been ascertained that German fighters have carried out successful attacks from slightly above and directly from a beam with front guns against tight formations of Wellingtons. Anybody see what's wrong here? And I thought that I'm the only one who in January struggles to put the correct dates. That's hilarious. I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's 1940. It's 1940. I'm actually gonna put that as a note. Just, I mean, I'm gonna put a question mark because you can never 100% sure. Yes, World War II hadn't started at that point, but if there was already a mistake, no, actually, I'm gonna do that differently. No, this is nonsense. This is 1940. There we go. Tactics of German fighters. And this is the same thing, just transcribed differently. The opinion is still held that for the average pilot, full deflection shooting is not profitable, though it may prove a useful distraction when made in cooperation with other fighters attacking an unbroken enemy from. Yeah, okay. That held true for most of the war. Yeah. Oh, naval action. Eh? This is so British that they are quoting out of a naval action from 1782 with reference to the Battle of the Helgoland Bight in 1939. Oh, this is so British, it hurts. Is it true that Germany is now considering the F-35 again to replace Tornado? I mean, the new defense minister, she said that all options are open. I'm paraphrasing, she didn't say that exactly like that. She wants to see all options. That's what she said. And there have been a couple of journalists who have written articles saying that the F-35 is again being considered. But you gotta remember, sometimes journalists just write something because they have to write something. And yeah, so maybe. The question for Germany is just like the F-35 and the Eurofighter. I mean, they could have more Eurofighters, and they could go with the F-35. They need just to make a choice, because the choice is more than just an aircraft. The choice is also, what do they want their Luftwaffe to be able to do? And that's the question they have to answer first before they make a choice. The problem is, the Luftwaffe probably knows how to answer that question. The politicians that make the decision don't. And if anybody is now going to write anything about Ukraine and a Ukraine conflict, I will tell you now, I don't want to see that in my chat today. So stick it somewhere else. I'm already pissed off enough about my government position on this. I don't need to see more on it. Plus, it's a YouTube chat. Let's keep it civil. Okay, this is the same thing as earlier. Okay, so now my Adobe is crashing? Question mark? That would be a first. No. And again. Okay, so we'll wait for Adobe to get this sorted. I'm gonna put a poll in the chat. And that is just for me to know whether this format of stream works for y'all or not. There we go. Not getting blurred. It's again not responding. Like I can jump from one page to the other. Okay, so now this time the date is correct. I mean, this is interesting because yeah, the Legoland, not the Legoland, the initial sort of tactics were to avoid the guns to the rear of bomber aircraft because the assumption was that the pilot shooting is better than it was actually. So this seems to check out also from the British side. Although there's nothing much new in this file. To be honest, I phrased that poll question poorly because everybody who's enjoying it is here, whereas those people who are not enjoying it left. And we only have 100 people here, and usually there's at least 180, sometimes up to 350. So I'm not quite sure if people are enjoying it that much. I'm having a good. That is what matters here. My channel, if I say it in the German way, it makes it more obvious. On September, Brunsbüttel Harbor on the 4th of September. Now we go to Middlebrook and Everett, the Bomber Command Diaries, World War II. The 4th of September, 1939. Where do we have it? I mean, there's not many attacks in 1939, so this should be easy to find. The 4th of September. Leaflet raids. Wait, which number 9 squadron? Royal Air Force. I don't find an entry for number 9 squadron. Has that been corrected? That's been freaking. Where's the signature? Number 9 squadron. So on the night of the 3rd to the 4th September, which I believe is not referenced here, there was a leaflet raid by Whitley's, carrying 5.4 million leaflets to Hamburg, Bremen, and a couple of cities in the Ruhr. But that's not it. Here, Brunsbüttel. Yeah, Brunsbüttel Harbor, here we go. So, 15 Blenheims and 14 Wellingtons to bomb German warships. So number 9 squadron. Guys, can you check? Can somebody check number 9 squadron? They were probably flying Wellingtons, right? 14 Wellingtons here. That must be the whole squadron. That seems to be quite a significant attack, actually. It then became apparent that it was a case of every man for himself, and the next attack delivered on my aircraft came A burst of tracers between my wingtip and starboard engine nacelle. I immediately skidded the aircraft towards the burst, and a second later, a second burst passed across the port wing. All these bursts were coming in from dead astern of my wing. I carried out this evasion tactic again. I skidded my aircraft towards the burst on the starboard engine. In a split second, a second burst of tracers passed between my port window of the cockpit and the port engine nacelle. Well, yeah, if you skid towards it, then it's gonna pass over you and to the other side. Last I saw of my number 3 was Wellington flying low. I quickly released my bombs. I endeavored to reach Cloud Base. Okay, so basically what I have here in the bomber things diaries. Yeah, there must be Wellingtons. They're Wellingtons. So it was 15 Blenheims and 14 Wellingtons to bomb German warships. 5 planes of each, so only 20 in total. More or less. So 5 planes of each force failed to find a target, so 20 found the targets. Most of the remaining Blenheims carried out low-level attacks against the pocket battleship Admiral Scheer and on the cruiser Emden in Wilhelmshaven. A couple of bombs hit the Scheer, failed to explode. Emden was damaged. 5 Blenheims were shot down. That's a third of the formation. Ouch. Yeah. Little is known of the Wellington attacks on ships in Brunsbüttel in the mouth of the Kiel Canal. 4 crews reported that they have found targets to bomb. Owing to navigational errors, 2 bombs were dropped at the Danish town of Esbjerg. Okay, so during this attack, 2 bombers actually bombed Denmark. Well, occupied Denmark. No, not occupied Denmark just yet. Not yet. 2 Wellingtons were lost. Okay, so essentially 30 planes and 7 aircraft lost, which is in total roughly 25%. Roughly 25% lost. That's bad. That's bad. Interesting. Might need that later again. $70 votes. Well, 70 votes is a good turnout from 100 viewers. People are saying they're enjoying the stream. Though there's only roughly a third of the people that are usually. That's also something to keep in. Okay, so here we got a couple of diagrams. Here's the bombers, the fighters, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I mean, that's what they explained earlier, that they essentially came from the front, flew past, attacked from the rear. Although, a lot of the approaches were supposed to be beam approaches, right? That's what they were saying earlier. Wellington versus Messerschmitt tactic. Sometimes you read stuff like this that hits you a little bit. In conversation, Squadron Leader Lamb stated that one projectile from a cannon hit the Perspex side window. You remember Lennox Lamb? You remember him? So when was this written? 10th of September 1939. And if we go up, we have the report here by Lennox Lamb, Squadron Leader number 9 Squadron, written on the 9th of September. His injuries from him since written in the letter show that he has been unable, as requested in the conversation, to produce evidence of damage owing to his Wellington having already been repaired and since then crashed in flames in an accident. So essentially, within a day, that Wellington crashed. Yeah. It's called attrition. This is the same report again. This is a different report. Bundesarchiv ASMR stream when? I'm not quite sure if I can stream Bundesarchiv files. Same copy of the one earlier. Third group. Yes, but which attack? 6th September. 6th of September. 21st of September. No, 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 no. 6th of September, there was no... Is this the date or is this not the date? It might not actually be the date. It might just be the ops number. Fighters opened fire with approximately 200 yards with 6 guns. 109s, 6 guns. 109s, 6 guns. You know, I'm not gonna judge. In the heat of fire, you don't know. No cannon fire encountered, so it must have been D's or early E's. At this time, Western Front, it must have been D's. Actually, no, there were some E's stationed in West Germany. Well, West Germany, western side of Germany in September 1939. Was it D? Check. The slightest skid of Wellington through the off-fighter's aim. Yeah, I believe that. I still would like to know exactly when this operation was. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 groups. Wilhelmshaven area. I mean, this cannot... Is this based on... This is the Wellington, so it's not... There was a raid, of course, on the 3rd of September. we don't have much to go on here, because we have the Blenheims that attacked Wilhelmshaven on the 4th. We have the Blenheims that attacked no, these are Hamptons and Wellingtons. Yeah, so Wellingtons attacked Wilhelmshaven. Tried to attack Wilhelmshaven on the 3rd of September, and on the 4th of September. But I mean, they're saying Wilhelmshaven area. Okay. Yeah, Trauco, yeah. I agree with you. That would be interesting. Wait, is this an appendix to another file? I'm not quite sure which attack they're referencing here, but it might just be the ones that we saw earlier against Brunsbüttel. Might just be that. Because I think at this point in time, that's the first and only time that the Wellingtons had contact with enemy fighters. The Free Front Gun Fighters. Sixth of September. So it was 6th of September that the report was written. So it must reference the 4th of September attack then. Okay. Oh god. I think I should make a video saying why Germany didn't need a strategic bomber. Maybe I should do that. Gonna ruffle a few jimmies. I think I made something differently or something similar already. Okay, so I'm not exactly convinced that this archive file has anything specifically of interest just yet. A couple of interesting sort of anecdotes there from the early, but yeah, not too convinced. I rate this archive file 3 out of 7. I joke. All archive files are 7 out of 7. Right. I have another file. Oh, from trials carried out on a captured 109, it is evident that this aircraft turns with difficulty to starboard, particularly when climbing and it has been found almost impossible for the pilot of this aircraft to bring accurate fire to bear whilst maneuvering as above. Hashtag doubt. No, I mean the preferred climb for the 109s was in a left-hand turn. Left-hand climbing turn. Makes sense. Of course. You're not going to be climbing at like, what, 270 kph, trying to get an accurate shot in. Not a good solution. The following are extracts from French reports on German fighter tactics as met on the Western Front to date. So this is in September 1949. This is during the Phoney War. This is during the Phoney War. No. Did I buy this stock? No, I go to the archives myself, buddy. Welcome to Military Aviation History, where we get our hands dirty in the archives. And we don't just put archive footage into the videos, we actually do the research. Okay, 20 to 25 minutes after the arrival of the French aircraft is not too bad, considering 1939, probably mainly visual observation being done on the Western Front, plus then phone transmission to the different squadrons, probably via Luftgau, maybe via the Luftwaffe, or maybe via the centralized command somewhere else. 20 to 25 minutes is not bad. Oh yeah, they say observation posts here anyway. Oh, they say exactly the same thing that I just said. Should have just read point 4, I guess. Literally what. Oh, this is interesting. There is very close cooperation between the action of the fighters and AA batteries, and it is possible that a bilateral liaison exists between patrols in the air and air battery commanders. So as far as I know, the Germans were not happy with the cooperation between the AA, sort of flak, and the fighters in sort of, let's say, what was it again, 1941 onwards. And back then, they say that until then, there has been very little cooperation or very little thought put to cooperation between fighters and AA. And the reason why in 1941 it becomes more and more important is because, of course, the RAF mounts more bombing raids. So you have to have cooperation between fighters and the flak, and they establish certain zones where the flak fires indiscriminately of who's in the air, and there are certain zones where only fighters are allowed to operate, and there are certain mixed zones. But I have not yet heard about something like that existing in 1949. But considering that it's the Western Front, September 1949, considering that very few Luftwaffe units are deployed there, it is possible that maybe ad hoc between them they have created some sort of system that I'm not yet aware of. That is sometimes possible, that these units sort of do that by themselves without a sort of a centralized system. But maybe that's just ignorance speaking on my part. French Air Force, I want to do it. But the thing is about the French Air Force, I want to read more stuff about it in French, because I have a lot of stuff that was written by English or American authors on it, but very few stuff that has been written by the French on it. I do want to get like stuff from French historians, but the I have problems penetrating the French historiography. You know what I mean? The history landscape. I know, I have feelers in there, and I have I think I know enough maybe to piece stuff together from there. But I would like to have, the French seem to write a lot about aviation, but there doesn't seem to be like really professional historians on it. A lot of stuff is done by enthusiasts, which can be very, very good. But it seems to me that also the Second World War doesn't appear to be a big interest area. There is a lot of stuff on the actual aircraft. There's very little on the French Air Force in itself, or air service. So this one cool. Written by, what's his name again? Written by a French guy who was, but it was translated into German. Ja, Michel Forget. Die Zusammenarbeit zwischen Luftwaffe und Heer bei den französischen und deutschen Luftstreitkräften im Zweiten Weltkrieg. That was published in Luftkriegsführung im Zweiten Weltkrieg, ein internationaler Vergleich in Vorträge zur Militärgeschichte. These are very good books, although they're written in German. The problem is that I've read through that article and there's a couple of things that are wrong on the German side. Although it's a good article, that makes me question a little bit the French stuff. Ah, come on! Get in there! Run! Guys, I broke my panther. I broke my panther. I broke my panther. Nothing a bit of glue can't fix. It happens. Generally, our aircraft are first of all engaged by the AA batteries. Of course, that makes sense because the planes have to respond. Okay, so I don't think that's accurate. But I understand why the French would think so. Operate in double or triple patrols. Oh yeah, that's the size of the Staffel. German training did put a lot of emphasis in this. Oh, Trauco. Yeah, it is a pretty plane, isn't it? I like the Panther. Got a really cool look to it. Once again, the French come back with a vengeance, causing me kill my Panther. Oh, the speed of climb and dive of the Messerschmitts are comparable to those of the Curtiss, but superior of those to the Moran. So this is the 406 that they're probably talking about. I have an Inside the Cockpit on that one on the channel. You can check that out. And yeah, the P39. That. That's not far. Like if they open fire at 200 yards, that's roughly 200 meters, very roughly. That's not far at all. That's actually pretty good. Unless it's been that the French are misreporting it here because of their, they make just the observation mistake. The Germans apparently do not fight in searchlight areas. Okay. Okay. This is really interesting. I need to look at this more. In September 1939, German Luftwaffe cooperation with ground defenses and so on. Seems to be something there that I am not yet aware of. Because a lot of the stuff that you're saying here essentially sounds exactly like how you would expect it in 1943. So 4 years later. This is really interesting. I wonder if locally there has been a system that had been set up that then sort of was lost because, on the Western Front in 1939, the Germans didn't have that many units employed. Maybe there was tighter cooperation between the units that were there compared to what we have now. Compared to, not what they have now, compared to what they had later. Great accuracy of AA fire has been met up to 18,000 feet. Okay. Again, that's subjective in a sense. I would like to know how many planes the French have lost. Maybe back up that statement, but that doesn't seem to be given here. Evasive tactics of the 109s. Fighter escort duty. Tactics in avoidance of long-range AA fire. When flying at high altitudes of the order of 18,000 feet, AA guns are very unlikely to be dangerous. Yeah, French seem to disagree. No, actually, the French didn't say that they were dangerous. They said they were accurate. When, however, flying within reach of AA guns, pilots should realize that frequent change of... Wait, when was this written? What's the date? This part of the official document. 17th of October. I mean, it's a little bit early to draw these conclusions. Although, yeah, I mean, the Germans didn't have that many 88s just yet. ferry battles. Whitleys. Okay, is that the file? I mean, a lot of the stuff here doesn't really surprise me. Slash, it's that much value. Current videos. Have another look here. Now this one might be something that you guys are interested in because I used it in a past video on Japanese fighter tactics. If you haven't seen that, check it out. Just look for military aviation history. Japanese fighter tactics. Some cool drawings in here. Against B-20 heroes, for example, let's see. Against B-24s, Japanese fighters have attacked B-24s from the side and below, climbing to the attack and when then diving under the bomber and doing an Immelmann and attacking again. Against B-25 in the Gasmata area in July, 15-0 fighters intercepted a flight of 5 B-25s at 10,000 feet and an indicated airspeed of 280 miles per hour. B-25 assumed a tight formation and the Zero fighters attacked from head-on, from above and below, from a beam and astern. Just say from all the sides. Just say from all the sides. Against B-26s, oh nice, 5-0 fighters intercepted, engaged in a bombing mission, Gona area mid-November, action lasted 20 miles, 4-hour frontal, 3 rear passes, 35 to 40 degrees, all single, attack was not pressed. Okay, interesting. Precision bombing. A form of precision bombing has been used by the Japanese to a great extent against airfields, wharfs, and artillery. Normally, 2-engine light bombardment types are used. The attack is begun at altitude 10,000, plane nose down towards the target angle 45 degrees. The bombers are leveled off to 50 altitude. Bombs released in life of flight. So essentially, what they're doing, yeah, they're using the speed to during the closure. They're not dive bombing. They're diving down, leveling out, bombing, and then they use to gain speed probably to get the hell out of Dodge. Guadalcanal area, October. High-level bombers engaged area, Mitsubishi Type 1, Navy twin-engine heavy bombers come in. Okay. Tires 20,000. Yeah. Sorry, I just got a message. $25,000 feet on a Betty. 27,000 feet Betty. Night bombing Port Moresby. Fighters saw return fire from above and below the enemy, but they did not appear to be erratic. Bombers' exhausts were visible from 1,000 to 2,000 below. Dive bomber tactics. Review of reports. Japanese dive bomber operations at Hawaii confirm earlier conclusions. Great success of the attack is attributed to careful planning, complete knowledge of objectives, and determination in execution. Dive bombing was carefully synchronized with high-level attacks and with fighter support. Dive bombers attacked to all directions simultaneously, 45 to 50 degrees. Use fragmentation and demolition bombs, none larger than 5,000 pounds. Deceptive tactics. Recent reports from the Milan Bay area confirm reports of tactics employed by Japanese dive bomber pilots indicating they may have been damaged. That they may have been rolling aircraft to indicate loss of control, releasing dense black smoke. That's probably them just pushing the throttle way up there. Going into a spin by making recovery before the dive. Okay. Dive bombing attacks on British cruisers. Japanese shadowing aircraft operate positioned 14 to 20 miles astern of the Dorset, you know which plane, ship, and Cornwall before the simultaneous attack on the cruisers in April 1942. Dive bombers appeared directly overhead at approximately 10,000 feet, possibly a glide approaching. Dive bombers operated in flights of 3 aircraft attacking in quick succession. Dives were made from 60 to 80 degrees angles. The bombs were dropped from a height below 55. Each airplane carried 1 or 2 bombs. Guadalcanal. Mid-November, 1 attack was reported by a flight of 2 dive bombers, reported by 8. Yeah, they emitted dense black smoke. If I remember correctly, this is just the Zero going full power. This was often reported with the Zeros. Sometimes even the pilots reported that like the Zeros were shot down when they, but really it was just the engine going into full power. Justin has a lot of stuff on that. Smoke cartridges, nonsense. I mean, yeah, from the perspective of the observer, maybe that's what it looks like. Oh yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna put a final poll in there. In the chat. Actually, there is no real poll option that I can just ask this to the chat by this. The question is, so basically what I'm planning is streaming twice a month. Once sort of having a question and answer session where Patreons and channel members and so on supply questions and I answer them. And to do that. And the second stream, something like this, where I essentially do mainly research. Wouldn't be talking as much as I talk today, but mainly be focusing on the work, and obviously we can hang out and I will maybe be trying to answer some questions, but not as much. Is that something that you guys are interested in? Do you have any suggestions for streams? What would you like to see? Just let me know in the chat. Let's have another 5 to 10 minutes of discussion here and see what we can do from there. Let me see if I can make myself bigger. I make myself. There we go. Hey. Also, I'm gonna see if I can fix my Panther some way. I do have glue. Also, people in the chat, make sure that you check out the last videos I made. That was the video, the Sea Vixen inside the cockpit, as well as the video on the Stuka dive bombing and the misconceptions about how the Germans used the Stuka. YouTube did not seem to like those videos because barely anyone watched them. So it would be good if you haven't seen them yet, check it out if that interests you. Check it out on the channel. Make sure you watch some of that recent content as well. Because yeah, the year has been opening very, very slowly for me for some reason. Just fine, I guess that happens sometimes, but it's just interesting sometimes to see what sort of topics attract traction and what doesn't. DCS streams, yeah. I would. The only thing is with DCS is that, like, how should I say? I always feel like it's not easy to interact when I play a game. And that's what I want to do a little bit more, interact with people. So we'll see. Yeah, so streams would happen on Saturdays. Probably every second Saturday of the month, since I also put out 2 videos a month. Every second Thursday, so the second week of the month and the last week of the month, which means that next week, so what is that? That is the 24th of February, you will have another video coming up. Of course, if you're a Patreon or a channel member, you already know which one is it going to be, and you're probably going to have early access from Monday onwards for Patreon and channel members, so check that out if it interests you. Also, we have a Discord server where we have twice a month meetings as well for Discord members, so if that interests you, that also might also be something to check out. If the archive streams have less interaction, doesn't that counter the point of the live stream? Yes and no. So basically, it's also a way of me, like, one of the things I want to do with this channel is get people sort of in the mode of thinking where our information comes from, like how to do historical research and so on and so forth. So an archive stream is supposed to sort of cater to that part of the channel a little bit, and that's why I'm sort of want to push that front, but I wanted to make it in such a way that it can actually feel like it's a worthwhile use of both our times, right? You as a viewer and me as a streamer. So that's why I'm like wondering if ever that's a really good ingredient, but you just don't know unless you haven't tried it. And I've tried it once now. Not quite sure what I think about it just yet. You know, a lot of you seem to have enjoyed it, considering the poll earlier. You can also let me know what you thought about the stream in the chat right now. I'm looking at it. There are not a lot of viewers. There's 80 viewers. There's only 130 likes. Let's just go with the metrics here. That's not a good, just from like the mathematical side of things, from the analytical side of things. That's not a good result. But it's also a different audience that I'm catering. If you're watching this, you're probably, you know, as a person, differently interested in this channel than a lot of other people. So, questions. Oh, like ratio just went up a little bit. If you do an MMA, oh yeah, I mean, Alex, yeah, the Q&As are essentially for Patreons and channel members first, and then super chats, and yeah, and then regular chat if there's extra time. I also had a couple of people that suggested doing that with sort of regular streams as well. I'm not quite sure if I want to be doing that. I do want to give everybody the option of asking a question, but yeah, I mean, if you do a super chat or if you're a Patreon supporter, then you would have priority, absolutely. No, I mean, Francis, I could learn the aircraft in DCS as we're doing this. I have been doing that with the A10 already a little bit, but the question is just, I mean, I enjoyed it when I did that, and I think a lot of other people enjoy that as well. But it is a different sort of beast as a stream than what I'm doing right now. The Stickman and shows viewers there is actual research behind the videos. Yep, that's true. I mean, that's also a little bit of the archive streams as well. You know, I want to show people where my research comes from as well. Oh yeah, the Sea Vixen. Yeah, if you haven't seen the Sea Vixen video, check it out. That's probably one of the most in-depth inside the cockpits I've done so far. Yeah, that must be said as well. I think sort of the mention what you've been saying there, the questions and the interaction that I've seen today, even though it's a smaller audience pool, has been very different to the other streams. So that's actually something to take away as, again, to say, like, you know, there are different pools within the audience. There are different bandwidths of people with different interests. I have announced streams, but to be honest, the way that I haven't really seen that much of a difference in terms of how many people show up. In fact, when I've announced streams, less people have shown up when I haven't announced streams. So. Also, my stream is bugging out. Like, I see it's green on my end, but my own stream, the one I'm watching here of myself, is bugging out the whole time. So I don't know what's going on there. Might be a sign that this is time to stop the stream. I think that's what I'm going to do, actually. Everybody, thank you very much for showing up. I don't even know if you've seen this anymore because it seems that the stream is going a bit wonky. Thanks very much for showing up. I hope you have a fantastic Saturday, a fantastic weekend. Check out the channel next week on Thursday because a new video will come out there and I think a lot of you will enjoy it. It's a topic I haven't touched just yet, but it's about to get very explosive. And honestly, I think you'll enjoy it and appreciate it a lot. So, as always, I wish all of you a fantastic day. Have yourself a fantastic weekend as well. Surround yourself with friends, good vibes, and as always, see you in the sky.